We're
This is
blessed.
Gabriel Gonzalez for MMA Caged, here with the UFC 308 preview show. I'm here with one half of one of my favorite couples in the sport. She is the FanDuel racing analyst. She's the commentator for Cage Fury. She is the always amazing Geena Lucille. Geena, welcome back. I've had you on the show. I've had your husband on the show. And you know what? We had to run it back again for this big card. How are you doing?
I'm absolutely wonderful. And honestly, just to sit here with you and talk about the fights is one of my favorite pastimes. So let's jump right into it.
No, well, thank you. Obviously, we're going to talk about a lot of things going on. You're obviously repping the team over there at Cage Fury. We want to hear all about that. But let's get into this. UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi. One of the most exciting featherweight fights that we've had in a minute, but particularly this year. Undisputed champ Ilia Topuria taking on the BMF champion, longtime former champion Max Holloway. Geena, one, just to talk about it like as a business, this is just another home run blockbuster matchup in a long line of them for the UFC this year. And I think that this just kind of goes to show how healthy the sport is in 2024, that we've had so many fights, and this Saturday we got another huge one. I think this fight is another one, once again, that speaks to a lot of the different things that people love about the sport. You have two guys at the top of their game. Ilya really providing a breath of fresh air in this division that's really been run by that two-headed beast in Volk and Max. And then you have a guy in Max Holloway who, let's be real, if Alex Pereira wasn't doing unbelievable things, would be the consensus fighter of the year right now, coming off the moment of the year knocking out Justin Gaethje at UFC 300, the buzzer beater, the point, everything to love about this matchup. And not to mention the fact that they are most likely going to stand and bang, and for as long as it lasts, it's probably going to be amazing television. Fans are very excited. What I love about you though, you have a lot of numbers and you're very good at presenting them to the public. Talk to me. What should fans really like about this one?
I just come on this show for the compliments, Gabriel.
Hey,
But
all day.
that
I got you. I got you.
I love it. I mean, and I have a plethora of things to say about you too. But jumping into this main event, okay, we have a fight that the fans of the sport that are Max Holloway ride or dies are sitting in their seats and they're almost a little bit sick to death, right? They are they're not well, they're not healthy, they're just really nervous about this because it could go so many ways. And I say that because we've seen Max Holloway get defeated by the smaller, shorter, compact fighters. So this right here is something that um, is going to be a challenge for him because Topuria has such power and precision, and he's calculated. He comes into the cage, and he just has this way about him that is not false sense of confidence. I mean, he is the real deal. But this is going to be a show as well, and I want to make this known to the new followers that are coming here, that if you're not an MMA fan, if you watch UFC 308, you will become a ride or die, and you will start watching all the shows that are presenting themselves on Fight Night, Fight Pass, Contender Series. I mean, there is just so much in this sport. And so just to dive deep into this, these are my notes, everybody. If you want to see
Oh
what the
gosh,
Geena notes look like,
John
this is
Anik
how I
over
kind
here.
of, these are just my brief, like when we jump on, of just my points. So I have with Max Holloway, um, his defense has gotten a lot tighter, and you've seen someone, usually a guy with 26 fights and 7 losses, so he's got over 30 fights. You don't really see them changing or growing. A lot of people used to say that Max Holloway had pillow hands, and now we've got some knockouts, we've got some finishes. I mean, he's the only guy to put away the Korean Zombie. So that right there tells you how tough he is. Something that I think people are forgetting about is he was bulking up for lightweight, and then he had to now cut back down to featherweight. So that's going to be a question on how his body is. Sometimes with the cutting weight process, your body just reverts right back to it. And I know that personally as a jockey, I just started riding races back again. And when I went in the sauna, I didn't even turn the sauna on yet. My skin started like sweating, like it just knows. So he's had this belt. He's tasted this victory. He has tried 3 times to get it back, and he has the BMF belt. So this is a really hard fight for me to put down a stamp like this is the winner. I also want to make note that his high volume was a little bit more reckless in his past, right? And now we've been seeing a more mindful approach later in his years of fighting. So that's really going to help him with this fight. The toughness of Max Holloway, and that's just his underlining. Man, when you watch him fight, there's just no quit in him. This man has 0 quit. But his kicks are going to be his best friend, because if he can slow down Ilia Topuria in this main event, you're going to see Holloway be able to grind it out. We really haven't seen much of Topuria and his grind. So, I mean, we've seen he's just so... Here's the thing about Topuria. He's well-versed. He is just very explosive and precise. So he's more of a sniper, where you have Holloway as a grinder. So these two together, it's gonna be just so. It's the chef's kiss,
right?
The chef's kiss is on this fight completely. Now, Ilia Topuria with the 33% TKO victories and the 53% submission victories. I always find that very interesting with Topuria, because he's got this amazing grappling pedigree, but he doesn't really apply it in most of his fights, because he loves to strike and he knows that that's fun and he gets away with it. He just nails it on the head. There will be a lot of questions answered for this whole fight card, but especially for this main event. I have such a hard time just pinning Topuria in a finish. I think we're definitely obviously it's going to be a finish or a decision, but with this fight, there's so many questions swirling around my head. So I want to ask you, though, with the bulking with Max Holloway going from lightweight to featherweight, what is your take on that?
I think the biggest thing you got to remember is that Max Holloway always knew that there's a good chance he's going back to featherweight after that Gaethje fight. So if I look, obviously only Max knows exactly how they chose to approach it, but when I go back and I look at the tape against Gaethje, I look at the photos that have been posted all week of, his physique, how he looks this week back at featherweight compared to 300 earlier this year. Doesn't look like that big of a difference. I'm not saying he didn't bulk up. Obviously, he probably ate some more protein. Obviously, probably lifted some more. But I think that the thing about Max, he's got such a casual personality. But let's be real. This is a very intelligent fighter. This is a guy who probably treated it kind of like a science and said, hey, for lightweight, I'm going to eat this much more and lift this much more. When I taper it back down, I'm only going to lift this much more and probably diet this way again. This isn't a guy who's just decided, okay, how are we going to approach it? I think they had a long-term plan before he accepted the fight with Gaethje. How do you approach getting back to featherweight? So, is his body going to feel weird between now and tomorrow when he does official weigh-ins? Sure. Is it going to be a problem? Absolutely not. I don't see that being quite an issue. Where I will say the intangible comes in, I think there's a lot of mileage on Max. Let's be real. Several fights with Volk, several fights with Jose Aldo, everybody in between. He's looked great in most of them. That being said, that is a lot of fights and a lot of cage time compared to a young, hungry, younger, still hungry, just very powerful athlete in Ilia Topuria. So, is the weight cut itself objectively as one factor going to be the difference maker? In my opinion, no. But when you compound it with all of the things and that add up to, getting to fight night, you can't tell me that if Max Holloway lands 20 punches and Ilia lands 20 punches, that I expect Max to still be the one feeling better after all that. And I think that's where some of that, some of that mileage starts to kick in. That being said, we haven't been given an indication that Max is, quote, there yet, where he is more susceptible to damage. So I don't expect that until we see the evidence in the cage to be a factor. Um, I think the other fact that you have to talk about is you come off of February for Ilya. The fan base could not get enough of him, and I've said this: he is tailor made to be a superstar, multilingual, exciting guy. I mean, good looking dude. I mean, have you seen that beard? I mean, let me tell you something. If every guy could grow a beard like that, they would. I mean, come on now. I know
No,
that's your boo.
he's a good looking man.
It's okay. Chance doesn't watch this. He's busy training. No, but oh, by the way, okay, quick side note. I've interviewed him. You want to know something else too? He smelled amazing. He had like the nicest cologne on, and it was like a multi-sensory experience. And it's like Ilya, it's like, you ready? Yeah, man. Thank you. And then it's like, what are you wearing? It smells fantastic. And he's like,
What
oh,
was he wearing?
I can't even remember. We were
To
in like
ask him
the
next time I see him.
yes, but like it was like, bruh, he even smells fantastic. It's one of those funny things.
I
But
love
look,
that. You look good, you fight good, and you
no, when
smell
it just
good.
hits you, it's like, I'm sorry, I have to comment on this, man. No, look, very
That's
nice guy,
awesome.
by the way. No hate either side. There's two favorites, but coming off of that, look, you knock out Volkanovski, who's obviously amazing Hall of Famer.
Well,
Go
and I
ahead.
wanted that's something else in my notes here, Gabriel, is Volkanovski, he got caught with the absolutely perfect strike.
Yes.
And you take that into consideration. So you don't want to take anything away from Topuria at all or Volk. But the fact that Volkanovski is such a grindy, again, tough fighter. And he's very good at getting in and out of the pocket.
Yeah.
And he's very careful with getting in and out of the pocket. He's a master at it. And the fact that Topuria could get that strike on Volk, and again, Volk's fast, he's powerful, he's good at getting in and out of the pocket, and his head movement is great. Topuria got it. He got it done.
Yeah. I
I think
think
Max Holloway is going to have a really he's this is going to be a very technical fight, and Max Holloway cannot make a mistake. If he makes a mistake, Topuria is the type of fighter, the sharpness, the fight IQ. He takes advantage of every little opportunity. And I'm excited to talk about the rest of the card too, because there's not a lot, there's a few other fighters that just capitalize off of fighters making mistakes. And it's almost, this is a good card for underdogs.
I think that the biggest thing with Topuria getting there is that there's a few intangibles coming off that knockout over Volk, and you see it, I see it. They bring him out to the Real Madrid stadium, and all of
Mm-hmm.
Spain seems to be eating out of the palm of his hand. It's a great time to be Ilya. And then Max Holloway does what he does to Gaethje, and you notice there was this shift. Suddenly, I almost felt like you could see it on Ilya's face. It's like, oh man, this is happening right now, isn't it? And you could just see him become the antagonist of the whole story. And I get it. People have loved Max. He's obviously got so much history with the fans. Fans are newer to liking Ilya, knowing Ilya, etc., etc. Look, Max is a cool guy. Everyone knows it. Volk has even admitted it. Um, but every time these two have gotten on the mic to talk to each other, all those virtual lives UFC and ESPN do, I gotta be real with you. Max has gotten the better of Ilya. And I can't help but think that Ilya is noticing, like, I am losing this war of words before the fight even gets there. And why do I think that's relevant? Because when you talk about the level of focus you need to be at to perform at that level that he does when he fought Volk and these performances that he's had, I think a big part is the mental game. And I do think that even though Volk was very well loved, the love for Max Holloway is almost very different because I think that he was just the next guy in line for Volk. The fight with Max is personal, and you have to now, silence all that in your own mind and just treat it like any other competition. Max has way more experience on that stage. Ilya, just I believe this is his third UFC main event, a little newer to this kind of, stage, and I think that's one of those things. Can he put all of that aside? Can he shut all of that out and just treat this the way he needs to perform at that level? Because if he starts getting emotional, if they start thinking too much about this, who's going to point down first 10 seconds, last 10 seconds, that's when you get off of the game plan. And that's where a guy with the experience of Max Holloway can really take advantage when you're out there.
I
I think
don't.
that
I
go
Oh,
for it.
sorry. Keep going.
I was just going to say, in terms of the X's and O's, I think Ilya tends to use his grappling offensively more often than Max. Max, he kind of looks for it if you kind of leave it there for him, but, you can't tell me you watch Max Holloway and you think, dang, that guy goes for a lot of takedowns. You know what I mean? Ilya, a little more comfortable if he's on a roll, just taking you off of your feet and to keep doing damage. Obviously, more one-shot power seems to favor a guy like Ilya. I think that he is not quite as volume. He doesn't strike with the same volume, and he's not quite as multi-directional as a guy like Volk. So I think that that's one of those things you got to keep in mind is how are they going to get that done?
That's I really like that too. I like that a lot because when you talk about the mindset of Topuria and Max Holloway, they have two totally different approaches to fighting. And Max almost knows this is an entertainment factor. And Ilya is now learning, not learning that, but again, like you said, this is his third time being a main event. The not just the mindset, but the way that you are dividing your attention as a performer and a fighter makes or breaks you as a top ticket seller. Now, Topuria has, he has his fan base, but so did Volk, and so does Max. I feel like a lot of people who were other fighter supporters end up being Max Holloway supporters, which was me. Not me, total. Like I like them all. Don't get me wrong, but I was like, this guy is just he's on another level. But how long can you stay on that level? I don't think Max's and I'm going to call them shenanigans because they're just entertainment factors. Topuria's not going to fall for that type of if he points or if he does anything. Topuria's so laser focused, and that's why he's so precise and his precision is so good, is because you don't knock him off of his game plan. I actually feel he's going to thrive in a challenge like that. If Max tries to challenge him in the cage, not just with words, you're going to see Topuria really just laser focused through.
Almost like lock in.
Yeah,
even
it's
more.
it's a lock. It's a lock
Yeah.
in. Yeah, absolutely, Gabriel.
I think, and I think that's the thing he's gonna show that. I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's one of those X factors. If you're gonna be the guy who beats Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski back to back, you're gonna need to perform like that.
Yep.
Now, there's been no indication that Ilya is not that guy, and that's why this fight is so fun
Yeah.
because we obviously know Max is proven.
Yes. But Max
I
has
mean, a little
he
bit.
has been beaten.
This is
He
true.
has it's
But
not like
only by about one
yeah,
guy.
it's not
This Max Holloway, well, I guess Dustin Poirier, but that was such a weird circumstance. I'll give you that one too. But this is true, and Ilya talks about this. It's like you've taken it before, I haven't yet. I think even Khamzat has brought it up. Taking the losses versus not having it. Oh, it just gets so good.
I think if
We have a lot to
Topuria
talk
gets
about.
beat,
Go ahead.
it's gonna be at UFC 308. I think Holloway is the only
Okay.
guy right now in that division that could beat Topuria, and that's why they put this fight together. Not just because it's absolutely exciting and Holloway's had the belt and he's the BMF champ. He is the fighter that can do it. He's the guy that can sign the check. But he's gonna have to. He has a big task ahead of him.
What I
Lots of
think
low
though,
kicks. Those are, I mean, he's got to slow Topuria down, and he has to just take that little edge, of Topuria where that laser focus, and he's got to have that little something hurting. He's got to hurt Topuria.
he's got to get his
He needs to
respect a
do it
bit.
early
He's got
on.
to,
He
yeah.
needs to do it early on because the longer you leave Topuria in the center of that canvas, he is just an absolute nightmare.
And he gets more comfortable as it
Oh
goes
yeah,
on. I think that's
his
key.
flow state is just like I sit there drinking my wine, and I love watching Ilya fight because I'm just sit there watching my. I'm like, I look at my husband. I'm like, this is just. I'm like, honey, I love you, but this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. He's such a beautiful fighter. His craft is just really phenomenal, and it's just so beautiful to watch. Where Holloway he's a great fighter to watch because you just respect the level that he's at, and his fighter IQ is just. But there's a grittiness about Holloway. I would say Ilia Topuria is more of like the ballerina, right? Like he's just so
Yeah.
beautiful when he does it, and he's powerful, but he's beautiful and precise, and it's just so accurate. It's I don't know. Like I said, chef's kiss to Ilia Topuria. I'm a fan. You know, it'd be a
I
great
think
fight.
Ilya is kind of painting the canvas, is one way I'd describe it. Max Holloway, it's like an instructional video. Both very high level, but both very distinctly different things.
Oh,
You watch
we've
it.
got
Uh,
we've got Bob Ross and Picasso.
there you go. I mean, happy little
Happy
truth.
little treat. No mistakes.
Real quick.
Max Holloway can make no mistakes. No mistakes. He makes no mistakes. He
Um,
changes it into something else.
Real quick on the future. Obviously, Diego Lopez is doing really well. You got to think he factors in at featherweight. Obviously, you got undefeated Movsar taking on former champ at 135 Aljamain Sterling later this year. They factor into it. If Max wins, there's going to be interest for 155 again. BMF, obviously, wherever they land with the whole Connor and Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler, all of this is very much in play, but a lot of options for both
Oh
men
yeah,
going forward. I think that's the thing to keep in mind.
I'm
Let's
excited
get
to
into
see.
the
I've got to
oh,
throw
go for
out
it.
that little Aljo. I'm excited to see Aljo get back and see where
Oh
where
yeah.
the lineup is, just to see former fighters from Cage Fury on UFC Fight Pass in the cage at the UFC at the highest level. It's just so awesome.
And he was supposed to fight on Saturday. It's so unfortunate. The card could have been even
I know.
better. But no, look, high stakes at 45, potential stuff at 55. I know Elia's even talked about it, so good stuff going forward
And
for
I love
2025.
145. I love the 145 division, the featherweight division, because for a long time we were seeing that, just that conveyor belt of the same fighters, just, the Ferris wheel effect of the featherweight division. And now we're getting, a little bit more sprinkled in.
The parody,
Yeah,
yeah.
more variety, more flavor. And which means, you know, we're going to see more 145ers, which I love. I love that. I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you got people coming up: Movsar, Diego Lopez, Chance Beck. I mean, a lot of guys coming up. You know what I mean?
Chance Beck would be a good short notice call. He'd be a good short notice fighter. That'd be fun.
I I completely agree with you. Let's talk about this co-main event. Khamzat Chimaev finally coming back against former champion Robert Whitaker. Uh, I think the funny thing about it, one, let's talk about the easy one. Robert Whitaker, absolutely on a tear. What he did to Paulo Costa. One, I was there for that one. That was such a fun fight. Obviously, he's supposed to fight Khamzat, falls out, fights Ikram. Absolutely just monster performance against Ikram. I think it was like under 3 minutes. Absolutely violent stuff.
Yeah,
Great
that's what we
television.
call mopping the floor. I mean, it was
Oh yeah.
just Robert Whitaker is he's he's sneaky. He's a good fighter. Um, I think okay, but on the betting standpoint, so just to say on the main event, the betting standpoint, I'm gonna go with Topuria with an early victory, rounds 1 or 2, and then if it goes a little bit longer, um, I'm going with Holloway.
Max?
Yeah,
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 I'm with you
yep.
there. I think that's very fair
Just with
when you look at how they fight.
just with the card, even though Holloway has, over 30 fights, just with that advantage where he's been there, done that, and Topuria hasn't yet, that's where you could see a bit of an edge that Holloway is going to have towards Topuria. But early first round or second round, finish
Oh, Ilya's most dangerous,
that's his territory.
definitely.
Yeah. But okay, co-main event, Robert Whitaker is going to be, I'm totally opposite as the main event. Robert Whitaker is going to be a late victory, late finisher, or a decision victory. But we could see a round one finish of Chimaev for, yeah, or Chimaev, sorry. Yeah, Chimaev victory for the first round just because he comes out so hot and heavy. That's going to be a big, yeah. So that's my predictions for the co-main event. Late victory for
The
Whitaker or early victory for Chimaev.
the thing I gotta say, what I have heard about the Chimaev camp, they are very much almost like that Rocky Balboa, very old school. Like there's not a lot of rest day and all that. They run them like dogs, so you could be ready if that fight is fast or if that fight goes into the deep water, right? And Hamzat doesn't shy away from that. I think there might be a little bit of an overtraining aspect, and that's why he is so susceptible when he's gotten sick and he's, dealt with inactivity, as in earlier this year when he wasn't able to make it to the fight with Robert Whitaker. Um, I think that there's got to be a bit of a process to it because fans love him. I think now, though, you got to be in the position to actually get back to the cage and regain that momentum because at 85, I can think of like 4 or 5 guys right now on several fight win streaks winning main events.
Absolutely.
This is not the time to take a step back if you're Hamzat because the fan base very very much, I mean, you have kids, you have like a whole box of new toys waiting. And meanwhile, you got the one that's kind of hiding under the bed. If you don't find it, they're going to forget about it.
Absolutely.
I think that this is one of those fights for Hamzat. If you win it, let's be real, Robert Whitaker is about as respected a middleweight as you have in today's game. You beat him, you force the conversation back to you, and I know there's obviously a lot of talk about where can Hamzat fight, how often can he fight. A guy like Hamzat coming out and potentially, hypothetically, just let's just say knocks out Robert Whitaker quickly. That changes the conversation in 2025 because that's somebody new for a champion who's already beaten the top 3 guys in Dricus du Plessis. For Robert Whitaker, I mean, you do what he's done to Costa Ikram, and then if you come back and do something similar to Hamzat, you very much make yourself the guy for a rematch over anybody else with Dracus. And I think that's what makes this fight so fun. High stakes. Stylistically, you have a guy who is very durable, very physical in Whitaker. And then in Hamzat, you know what his game is, but we haven't seen him implement it at middleweight against a guy at the level of Whitaker. And that's going to be the X factor after all the struggles you've had to get back to the cage, after I'm sure a lot of discouragement in your personal life to not be able to compete. Can you put that aside and put it together in easily against the most high level fighter you've ever taken on at the highest weight class? That's really the hook for me, is that you have personalities and style. And now let's get into the substance, Miss Geena Lucille, because I know you got your notes right there, and you've been looking very intently at them.
Well, I want to say this about Robert Whitaker. The 27-7 career, right? The damage and the buildup is going to be something that we're going to see tailing off in 2024. Where are these fighters that are reaching the middle of their fight career, tipping the edge towards the way out? They're walking towards the back door. Not any time in the next year or so, but like year or two, they're about to walk their way out. So the durability, where does Robert Whitaker's durability lie still? Because we know he's a very durable fighter. The cardio and durability in this fight that is the number one thing when bettors are looking at these fights. One, the mindset, two, the durability and cardio. Where are these fighters going to fall into place? Because the question with Chimaev is the overall health because of their old school training styles. When you come into fights nowadays, and I get goosebumps because this is not, we're not brawling anymore. There are precise and just, there's levels of training and there's levels of just science behind the sport because we're putting more monitors and we're learning more about these fighters and the type of fighters and the overall just phenoms of fighters that we're seeing, athletes that we're seeing coming in here. So if you're looking at it at the overall health aspect, the big thing is how much damage buildup does Robert Whitaker have and what does he have left to endure, and the overall health of Chimaev. And with Chimaev, he is such a round one bulldozer that if Whitaker can withstand the bulldozing that Chimaev is going to come with in round one, where does that leave Chimaev later on? Because that's his fighting style. And we haven't really seen, other than I think one other fight where Chimaev has kind of just not coasted, but just wasn't so heavy early on. So it's really with that. The other thing is we've seen the power of Chimaev when he sent Burns across the cage with just that one stiff jab. That was nuts.
Oh yeah.
So if Robert Whitaker can survive round one, we're going to see it taken into the later rounds with Whitaker, and we're going to see a later victory. I want to say we'll see a submission victory from Whitaker or a TKO.
Yeah, I think that it's about taking Khamzat into the deeper water. I think making him feel that physicality. I think that Whitaker is just a very different guy to hold down, to take down, to keep down. And I think that that's where Khamzat, if he's going to get this done, has to prove it. We know Robert Whitaker's proven. I mean, he has some really underrated takedown defense. I mean, go back and watch like first fight with Yoel Romero, fight with the guy like Jacare. I mean, he's like watching him defend takedowns. I know this is going to seem very, an odd comparison because of the height disparity. Watch Jose Aldo defend takedowns. Robert Whitaker dialed in is just like trying to get the cat to fall on its back. Very hard to do. I'm with you. I think the physicality of Whitaker is that X factor. I think being able to take that damage, if he can, that's going to allow him to take this fight into deeper water. That's where that size, the strength, the skills going to push Khamzat. I think Khamzat at a certain point, when the rubber meets the road, is he still going to be able to dig deep like he did in that fight with Gilbert Burns? He looked great across 3 rounds, had to dig, but got it done with his physicality. You need to execute a much more efficient game plan and be effective at it if you're going to do a similar thing to a guy like Whitaker, because I think if you just bang in the middle of the octagon, that does not favor a guy like Khamzat in this particular matchup. So,
no, I agree.
A lot of fun stuff, a lot of high-level MMA. One of them is going to have to execute a very beautiful game plan to get this done. So if you're a fan of the sport in general, you will like it. If you are a casual who loves the personalities, you have arguably the most soft-spoken middleweight out there against perhaps the most... Let me tell you something.
Robust.
When you listen to Khamzat talk sometimes, he's like talking about Gilbert Burns' kids coming up to him backstage, and he's like, I don't want to fight no freaking soccer dad. I want to fight another killer like me. And we're trying to, it's like, man, that guy's different. But that's what gets him there, right? To fight at this level. Makes it for, if you're a casual, if you're a hardcore fan, this is easily, you could argue, almost as fun as the main event. And that's saying something. High stakes for the title picture. I don't know that a title shot will be next. They may have to wait a minute and anything can happen, but they are on the short list. So they are aware of that going in.
That puts them on the deck, on the waiting deck. The winner of this fight, absolutely.
Yeah, so it makes for a lot of fun. The main card as a whole, Geena, I really love it. I mean, when you look at just some of those highlights of that card, obviously Magomed Ankalaev finding a guy that I have a question. I've met him, Alex Pajeda. I mean, that dude is just as tall in real life as he is on TV, isn't
Oh
he?
yeah.
I know you got to see him at
Oh, I mean,
Contender.
well, look, I'm Laura and I always laugh because I'm like 5'1". I think she's like 5'2". We're like 5'1", 5'2", 5'2", maybe somewhere in my heels, and I mean, my heels are pretty tall. And Alex, yeah, Alex Pajeda is he's a very tall dude, very big man. Oh
That
man,
makes for a lot
no,
of fun.
he's a very very tall man, very tall individual. He definitely got his instant carnations as a child.
I mean, I think, look, when you talk about fighting the consensus fighter of the year, you got to do something special. Magomed Ankalaev has obviously mentioned that, and they've talked about, getting a title shot. He said that Dana White said he's got to look impressive. I don't know what's supposed to be more impressive than a 10 fight win streak, but okay. Maybe they think Tom Aspinall is more impressive. I don't know. But when I look at that, and obviously a guy like Rakic who was on a great run before he kind of, he was doing well against Blachowicz, blew out his knee in the fight, unfortunately. Came back this year, lost to Jiri in what was a fun one. This is a guy who is doing really well for himself. And I think that the opportunity against a guy like Ankalaev is that you have a very great opportunity to jump the line at a time when you probably had been shut out. And this is thanks to the fact that Alex Pajeda has went ahead and beat everybody in front of you and this year for you. So it makes for a very interesting fight. I think if you're Ankalaev, you can't tell me the pressure to hold serve isn't real. Everyone thought you should have been the guy back in Salt Lake. You have this now dangerous opponent in front of you, and if you win, you have arguably the opportunity to test the wrestling of Alex Pajeda and, you know, beat the consensus fighter of the year next year, potentially.
I
Very high stakes, very fun fight.
absolutely, I want to see Rakic win, and I think he's plus 400 right now. That's nuts.
Oh, that's great money.
Crazy. We will definitely be betting the 308 card for sure. But I think Rakic is just one of those fighters. He's a freak athlete, and we want to see him and Pereira. That's what we want.
I think that's fun on the feet. Mm-hmm. I always feel bad. I'm a very big meritocracy guy. I always like when you see a guy like Beneil Dariush put a long win streak and then, guys they take that loss and then the title shot never happens. I always feel bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm getting old. I'm becoming a softie like that. I get all sensitive. But for Ankalaev, look, he's the guy who's got to do it. I agree. I think that stylistically it might arguably be more fun just because Rakic is going to take it to a guy like Pajeda on the feet. So it makes for another one of those, who's actually going to execute. The X factor is always that Ankalaev has more proven wrestling in a division that doesn't have too many high-level grappling guys. And that's really the key. But he's got heavy hands, big guy.
He's a phenomenal counter striker. Like you said, he does have heavy hands. Yes. He's a guy, who can fight a little bit off his back foot as well. But that wrestling is just that chain wrestling that he possesses in his pocket at that division is ridiculous. I'm going with Rakic at the plus 400. He's a freak athlete. I think he has the second heaviest leg kicks at Ferreira. Yes. I think if he chops down Magomed, you're gonna have Magomed's gonna have some issues that night. He's gonna be again. We're gonna see underdogs prevailing. Lots of leg kicks on this card. If there's, obviously there's going to be sensible game plans coming in here, but I'm going to love to see the leg kicks to just slow that momentum down. And Rakic has some of the best leg kicks aside of Pereira.
Not for nothing, 3-round fight. A bunch of Magomed's recent fights were 5-rounders, so it does change the strategy a little bit. You got to get going a little faster. That favors a guy like
It does.
Rakic. To your credit, you've seen him on TV. Rakic, I mean, you've seen like those NFL players at the combine. That dude has legs like a running back. I mean, just very powerful athlete, younger guy too, in comparison to guys like Pereira and them. Um, yeah, that's a very powerful athlete that Magomed does have to be very careful of executing. I know that Rakic is, you know, not the best necessarily moment of his career inside the cage. This is a guy you can't take lightly. This is a very powerful athlete, very dangerous, has dangerous weapons. It's not just a layup for Magomed to walk into that potential title shot next year.
This is
So
a tough
it
fight.
makes for a very fun
Yeah, it's a
fight.
very fun,
Oh
tough
yeah.
fight. I love how you say that he's not really Magomed is not really given. He's not given away to just walk up the ladder. I mean, Rockage, but also Rockage is getting another shot at putting himself back in the line. You know, and he has been putting himself. You know, that Yuri fight just showed how tough he was and how forward paced he is. I mean, he threw everything but the kitchen sink at Yuri. And a lot of people are saying that Rokic has softened up his competitors for Alex Pereira. So that's only something that you could maybe think, am I taking anything away from Alex Pereira? 100 million percent no. Alex Pereira is an just like Rockage. Rockage is a freak athlete. I think Alex Pereira is a freak athlete phenomenon that he is the guy of our time and he is going to face guys that are going to challenge him at that time and he is going to be he's the GOAT. He's going to be the number one for a very, very long time. And people are just, you know, really going to appreciate and love him. And isn't Alex Pereira, he's 37, 38? He's 38.
Yep.
So to
Oh
be
yeah.
38, and I love seeing the older fighters that don't have crazy mileage. I mean, Alex Pereira has mileage, but it just goes to show you that you're not. And I know this is a light heavyweight fight, so people go, oh, you know, the lighter fighters at that age get a lot more wear and tear. And you could say they do because there's a lot more in that division, so there's a lot more fights going on. But Alex Pereira at 38 years old, where most fighters would be ending their career, is at the top of his game. And a lot of people are like, ooh, he's a tough one. But I will say Rakic is one of those that's the fight I want to see. I want to see Pereira and Rakic. That's the fight I want to see.
I mean, look, I'm here for it too. I think we're gonna find out on Saturday night if he could make it happen for
Yeah.
himself. Um,
Not only the betting standpoint is wonderful, but just the fight aspect, it would be just great. I love seeing the big light heavyweight striker versus striker with, you know, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu with that game plan put into the mix because it just makes for so many things can happen. And when I'm stumped, when I'm looking at the betting aspect, that's when I get excited because I'm like, that's what gets, you know,
the
that's what gets you going. It's like
the
playing a good game of
damage, dude.
blackjack.
The potential for damage is so much more fun when it's those two big
Whoa.
guys. Like look at Khalil and Alex. It's just right there. To fly through these
Yes.
last two, Lerone Murphy against the king of short notice, Dan Ige. I mean, just a fun fight stylistically. I think the thing about it, Dan, look, not necessarily lighting it up leading up to that moment against Diego Lopez, but I think that the fan base got reminded that this, when you're talking about at the highest level, kind of like any pro sport, any given night, you can hang with anybody in the
Mm-hmm.
world. And no notice, no camp, no nothing, essentially had just been staying in shape. Has that fight with Diego Lopez, who had a full camp and did have his own turmoil, but let's be real, he was getting ready for a high level guy against Brian Ortega. Lerone Murphy has been more consistent. He's the one on the long win streak. I think that his last fight was the main event with Barbosa. And what that leads to is that you now have a guy who has been more consistent against a guy who is trying to capitalize on the momentum he now has in his career in Dan. Very fun. Both of them like to bang. Both of them can grapple. I think that this moment is, you know, when we're talking about stories, who takes the step forward? does Dan build on that momentum, or does a guy like Lerone Murphy start talking about getting those fights with the guys like the Josh Emmetts and Arnold Allen, Brian Ortega, to move himself closer to fighting Max or Elia? You know what I mean? So very high stakes. What do you like about that one?
Well, I think there are quite some fights in between Lerone Murphy moving his way up to a Max Holloway fight or an Ilia Topuria fight. But Lerone Murphy has an amazing story. I mean, he should not be where he is today. And I just think that's incredible. And it's really inspirational for anybody out there that wants to be an athlete, wants to be a professional fighter. Just follow Lerone Murphy's story and just to go and really give yourself some motivation off of someone who is really paving the way for himself. And he shouldn't be here. The story, and you know what I'm talking about. The stories about him is just crazy. But anyways, moving forward, Lerone Murphy has really grown. I put down since the Barbosa fight, and he's gonna have a lot. He's gonna have a lot ahead of him with Dan Ige. But I do think that Murphy has grown a lot. Because Barbosa's very crafty. People think that he's just an older fighter and not washed up, but like the MMA fans are tough. And I watch a lot, even before this, just watching a lot of interviews and a lot of information, what people are saying about Barbosa is, the fans kind of put fighters aside really fast. And it's human nature to just jump on the bandwagon of the new shiny thing. But for someone to come in there and beat Barbosa, I have to throw in there that there was a lot of power behind that fight. So Murphy is definitely learning himself. He's still learning himself. He's going to have a good time controlling the cage, I believe. I do think the questions are, can he take the same shots that Dan Ige was throwing in the Anthony Smith fight? So that's going to be a big factor of how tough Murphy is. I do think with this fight, we're going to be closer to a decision. And if it goes into the later rounds, we're going to see more of a 63% chance of a KO victory going Dan Ige's side. And I say that because the fight against Anthony Smith was a unanimous decision win over Smith. It was a great fight. And he does tip the scale a little bit going on the decisions because it's high volume, high power, high pressure with Ige. And Dan Ige is going to be very hard to put out. I mean, Lopez couldn't knock him out. So
yeah, I was going to say, I think that's also the big thing too. They're both well-rounded. They're both durable. You really have to be putting it together perfectly to put down a guy like Dan and a guy like Lerone, who's very proven in this win streak.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Yeah. So that's my thing. So KO victory in the later round, 63% chance going with Dan Ige. But we could see it.
You know what I like about you, speaking numbers, every time you start talking, I want to be like that guy with like the pen and the paper just writing it all down.
I'll send you my notes.
It's like
I love my notes.
Promo code.
I do this with horse racing and I have to. I kind of want to make a system where like it's a little bit bigger and I can have more to say, but I really don't need more to say because then I'd be talking too much and we would be here all day.
It's like 63%. Promo code Lucille at FanDuel.com. Look, it's a fun one, and I think that's a great addition to the main card. Obviously, on the pay-per-view for us in the United States, it's kicked off by one of my favorite personalities, Shara Magomedov, taking on Armin Petrosyan. I gotta just say, I love listening to this dude. He reminds me of Khamzat in a way.
He does.
I think he is aware of he's like the black sheep cousin to the Dagestani, just contingent that we have gotten accustomed to over the last several years. He's like, no, I'm aware that I don't look like a lot of the guys you've gotten used to from my part of the
I
world.
love that.
And he does his own thing. He doesn't. He's told me, oh, of course I could wrestle. I come from the land of wrestling. That's just not what I like to do. I love it. Can't get enough of it. Armin Petrosian is proven against some high level guys, has wins over guys like like my guy Gregory Robocop, which I say to bring up how good Armin Petrosian is. Has taken a couple losses going into this one. I think though that is more proof that he has proven, he has been in there with high level guys. So I think that it's not unfair to say he is a litmus test for the potential of Shara. Shara, this is his third fight of the year, looking to capitalize on the momentum. I saw his media day. He's already saying he wants to be back later this year. He wants to be in action early next year. Okay, you need to show me you are that guy, because if he is, I mean, he only makes middleweight more fun than it already is. When you look at Caio Borraio, Nazardine Imavov, all these guys on the way up, he only adds to that fun. So the potential of him on another, the win, continuing his win streak in UFC, just makes it a more fun division as they keep on rolling.
Like you said, I mean, with Magnomedov, the fact that we see a lot of the decision fights go his way because he's very active, that chain wrestling, even his striking ability is super beautiful to watch, but very powerful. And like you said, at that weight division, it's just a nice breath of fresh air. And he's a lot different than a lot of the other guys that come in there from where he's from. But Magnomedov, the one that I loved was the left hook from UFC Fight Night back in June.
Oh that yeah, on Trocoli, right? That put him out.
It just
stuff.
Really showcased the power, and for it to be in the third round to showcase that he still has that power to put people out. That's something I get very excited about.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think that if you're Petrosian, you got to slow this guy down. And I know that the fans don't like hearing it, but let's be real. If you're not going to try to, outgun a guy like Shara, you got to push him against the fence. You got to make him wear on you. You got to work those legs. You got to do a lot of the utility work, I like to call it, attack the calf, put him against the fence, get the lactic acid building up in the arms so they can't wrestle. That's how you stop a guy who is more athletically gifted than you at a high level. Well, and so, not the most fun fight, but for a veteran like Petrosian, very easy game plan to follow. You just got to execute it.
And Petrosian has had a little bit of difficulty executing a game plan to the finish, right? Because if you look at his last three fights, 2 of them have been victories. He did get defeated in the first round with Vieira with the arm triangle choke. So that doesn't feel good. That doesn't sit right with a fighter that's really going to I feel like with Petrosian, that's really gonna hurt where he's at mentally coming in the fight with Magnomedov.
I would also be remiss if I don't bring up Magomedov hangs out in Dubai in the Middle East. This is his part of the world. He is going to be the crowd favorite. I'm sure there is the feeling of you are the guy being brought in to showcase the other guy for Petrosian.
Absolutely.
And so he's got to also battle that on top of, hey, like, I need to put it together against this dude if I'm gonna, I obviously want great things for my career, and rightfully so. So I do think that it makes for very interesting stuff.
Petrosian is gonna
be a fun fight because.
Go ahead. Oh no, keep going. Sorry, the stream stopped for a second, so I thought you.
I was just gonna say,
chance to be like, shut up, woman.
It's gonna force Shara to showcase. Not at all. I think it's gonna be one of those. Shara has to be dialed in to showcase, or Petrosian, he's gonna kick off that pay-per-view with a bang, and I think that always makes for fun stuff too.
Oh yeah, we're gonna see the first fight's gonna be, if the fighters are here to make a stamp. Petrosian needs to push the pace and he needs to get a finish, because going into your last fight with a loss, you're at that age and you've got these newer guys coming up. He has to be dialed in. He has to have the right game plan, and we need to see a finish from him, or we might not be seeing Petrosian much more. I hate to say that. Am I wrong? You can tell me I'm wrong.
No, I don't think so. I think, look, obviously, when you have an influx of talent coming in, let's say through Contender, one thing that helps them is that at 85, you do need more of those guys like Petrosian a lot. So I think that the guys in the higher weight classes, sometimes there's a little bit more of a wiggle room if things haven't gone your way. Particularly, I imagine his contract, for example, isn't the most, taxing on the UFC's books. And when you're talking about building up a guy like Shara or like anyone, kind of in that, are we starting to get you on a contender path? Or are you just exciting TV path? And evaluating that, you need a guy who's been proven against vets like a Petrosian.
Sure.
And so he might have a little more wiggle room, particularly the fact that we are aware that he is being set up for a guy like Shara, as opposed to, oh, these are two guys that they're building up to test each other. The matchmaking is, hey, you're taking on this guy in his part of the world, who's on a roll.
Yeah, and also when you follow the social media, you're gonna see Shara Magomedov with like Nina, and they're doing more fun stuff. So they're getting his name out there. They're doing a little bit more. So like you are correct. The middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight division, there's more room to keep guys in there that are more building blocks for the newer guys coming in. But that doesn't feel good for a fighter like Petrosian.
The fact that people lose every week doesn't feel good, Geena. But this is the game. I know. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Look. I've known contenders. You've met them too. It's like
I know, and I feel bad talking about that like that. But it's the business. When you break up the business of MMA. You have the athletic side, the entertainment side, and then there's this whole behind the scene backdoor of business side of things. And the UFC does a phenomenal job at creating the story and creating a narrative. You can, as a fighter, you can either be the brick wall that stops their narrative, or you're going to be the fish in their stream that's going to just be swimming up the stream going, going to go meet the bear, or be the bear. Who's the bear? Alex Pereira is a bear. Max Holloway is a bear. Ilia Topuria is a bear. I think Shara Magomedov one day will be a bear. I think there's something very special about Shara Magomedov that we haven't even tapped into yet. And I know that the guy is, I want to say kid. I mean, he's just a little bit younger than me, but he's 14-0. Faces really, really tough guys. Comes from a really tough place of the world. Tough training. Has knockout power. Has those submissions. Has those decision victories. He can go the distance. He's a very exciting guy to keep an eye on. And I love the fact that, with his physical abilities, he's a very inside, close rangey fighter, which people have a really hard time dealing with, but he has to fight that way.
Also, I think he's made a style that works for him. A lot of those kicks burn a lot of energy. He clearly knows his own body enough that he's comfortable with the output he puts out in a lot of fights, even if he's not connecting. Secondly, similar to a guy like Sean Strickland, you know that they drill very much if you get taken down, getting back up, or your takedown defense when you're standing that tall. When you look at a guy like Sean, see the similar thing. A lot of repetitions to stand up that straight and throw like that, but not really get in too much trouble when someone tries to wrestle you. That's a high level thing that doesn't get talked about enough. So yeah, I think that there's a lot to love from Shara in that way. So as he moves up the ladder, it's seeing him get tested.
Well, and
I think that's what we're gonna.
You can implement training styles during a fight camp, but when something is just naturally adapt it into your style and who you are as a fighter, it's almost impossible. You can't get that in a 4-month camp. You cannot. It
Oh yeah.
takes years of repetition and your body just knowing where to conserve and place that energy in those certain periods of time when you're exerting that style.
I agree, and I think that that's what we're going to see. Just more a showcase of that on Saturday.
Yes.
Geena, I mean, it's so much fun. It's like you're such a professional who does commentary for one of Fight Pass's biggest properties, Cage Fury Fighting
Can I
Championships
just
over
give them a
here.
shout out? I have
Of
really,
course.
really, absolutely loved my time with John Morgan and Ray Haydak and Miranda Granger and everybody else at CFFC, because the just the fights that they put on and the fighters that I get to talk to that are going to Contender Series. And I've worked for a lot of promotions that have sent people their way, but to be at undoubtedly the highest regional promotion, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion, has just been such an added ride into 2025 to be working for FanDuel and CFFC. I want to throw out that their match day, if you guys are into wrestling, match day is going to also be on Fight Pass. Cage Fury Muay Thai is going to be on Fight Pass. So we just have so many amazing shows coming to Fight Pass, and I can't say Fight Pass enough. I love being on Fight Pass.
No, look, you're doing fantastic over there. Great work. I saw Chance posted. Someone is copying the red blazer thing. I don't know where she got that from. Just saying.
Oh,
Um,
that's so
but
true. Do you know what? Next time when
uh,
we're at the show, like at a show together, let's just
yeah,
synchronize and do our
a
red
match.
blazer. I totally forgot. Yes, you did. That's your
Mhm.
signature. That's your red blazer and your haircut.
I give you full permission. You rocked it.
Well, thank you.
You get the pass. You get the pass. You're doing fantastic over there. This is not your first time. I know a lot of fans who maybe follow you might be like, "Oh, was she only doing the FanDuel thing before, being introduced to a wider audience through Fight Pass?" You've done commentary, obviously, on the regional scene, a ton of promotions, like you said, on the smaller scale. How would you say you have grown working in the system of Cage Fury after all the work that you've already done?
So when I started doing interviews, just fight interviews for, it was a major promotion for the developmental side of MMA. So I did I'm almost at 300 shows. I've done almost 300 shows, and they just keep getting, they just keep getting better and better and better. Um, I would say moving to the platform of UFC Fight Pass and Cage Fury, I get to see, I'm working with producers on production side. I'm working with producers that were working at the other big stages, not UFC, but the other ones. And they're just so dialed in. So it makes my job so much easier to showcase the fighters and the coaches and the training that goes behind it. So the journey has been so fun. It's been just one foot in front of the other type of journey, and I just don't stop. I'm just going. So FanDuel came later, and horse racing has been a part of my life since I was 14 years old. And I've been racing horses for about 17 years. So that's how I land. I'm doing the FanDuel side. But to be able to put the FanDuel betting side into fighting has been a new journey for me in the last year, because that was something that didn't even come to my mind of, oh, I can be a betting analyst for MMA fights, even though I'm not an MMA fighter. Of course, I have a background with, karate as a kid, and I loved it, with point sparring and doing all the Shaolin Kempo. So being able to look at the fighting style and then getting involved with Cage Fury this year, towards the end of 2024, has opened my eyes more to the wrestling side of things, which I've always been very curious about. I think wrestling's very intricate. It's very the muscle memory wrestlers have to have. So that's it's just been opening so many doors, Gabriel. It's opened so many doors, so many learning avenues. This year I'm going to start learning on just getting my judging license for Muay Thai and MMA, just because I want to know the rules. I want to know what the judges are sitting there looking at so that I can, find out who's judging and how they like to judge things. And that plays into effect with your betting aspect on things, and how to make money on a fight card.
And then we'd be remiss if we don't mention it. Obviously, your work as a racing analyst with FanDuel. You just pop up everywhere. I don't bet on the ponies, as they like to say over there in your business, but, I feel very confident when I listen to you. How would you describe that experience? Because obviously, you talked about it, being around it for a long time of your life, but your role has just kind of blown up. I think that it's very clear that the company, if they don't, they should rely on you more, because your ability to convey that information with language that's easy to understand, with something that, let's be real, people take very seriously. It's one of the most seriously gambled on sports and activities out there in general. And you've really been at the front of it. How would you describe just being able to grow with a company like FanDuel and the role that they've given you?
Well, everything that they throw at me, I have to sit down and learn a little bit more about. FanDuel has grown my production process, and it has grown my ability to help myself on the MMA scene, which also helps the fighters. So if I'm more prepared and I'm more preparation, it's FanDuel has taught me how to prepare my analyzing of my analytic brain of the horse racing and the MMA sport, and do the breakdowns better. So it's grown. It's just, I don't know, everything they throw at me, because I'm always doing something different. I'm either interviewing trainers, interviewing jockeys, talking about, the different levels of fights. Today I'm doing a video on the Breeders' Cup, because we have, when I say millions, it's like over, I think I want to say $50 million worth of purse money in 2 days. It could be more. It's probably going to be more. Don't quote. It's millions of dollars is given away on a weekend, which is just insanity. And so to work with big numbers like that and know the implications of people betting and where they're putting their money. It's not just me riding a horse now. It's me telling you, oh, I like this horse for X, Y, and Z, and me telling you I like this fighter X, Y, and Z. So being able to break down things in simple terms for people that don't understand the sport that much but want to get involved, FanDuel has really helped me do that.
And for what it's worth, I can personally, vouch for it. I have never watched a horse race in my life. And when we sat down in Kentucky, we went over your notes, and you were showing me, there was like a whole graph. It felt like a math book. And you explained it well enough that I was even picking up on it in our short time you explaining it. And it was like, oh my gosh, like that's what this all means. And it is very much a talent. Because it is something, there's a whole vocabulary, just like any sport, but there's, I think even compared to something like MMA or like some of the bigger ball sports, football, basketball, it's a very much, there's very minute details that make a difference. And it's a lot to convey to the average viewer, and you guys do a great job. I know obviously FanDuel, it's a big part of their content, but having someone who can really do it, clearly one of your strengths. You're so strong on the broadcasting side, Geena, and I also know you're still competing. I mean, how do you even work that into your schedule? I mean, talk to me about how all that has been going, training, and then just, I'm assuming, just getting out there on the track for some laps.
It's been a journey, and as long as I can put my foot in the irons, I'm going to do that. Like any fighter, as long as that fighter can go in the cage and fight, they're going to do that. It's just a part of my DNA. It's in my bloodstream. So I can really relate with the fighters that I talk to about the hours it takes, because a lot of people are watching that 1 minute race or that 2 minute race, and the fans are watching that fight go on for, either it's 3 minutes for the amateurs in the first round or 5 minutes a round for a professional. And so I really want to convey I wake up sometimes. My husband laughs at me. He makes fun of me. He says, Geena doesn't get out of bed until 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock. That's not true. I mean, my late days are like 11 because I'm either getting up at 4.
I was gonna say I'm gonna ask him after
You
this,
should.
by the
I'm
way.
either, he gets so mad. He's like, she's either up at 4 o'clock in the morning or she sleeps until 10 because when I'm going, I'm going. And when I get up at 4 o'clock, it's because I have 5 to 7 raging dragons in a stall ready to breeze, which is a prep, like a prepping of the race. And then that's lining them up to win a race. So I'm either getting up really early in the morning, and so I ride the 2-year-olds because I'm not a big name jockey. I don't dedicate all my time to being a jockey anymore, so I'm not getting the best of the best older horses. I'm on these little not little, they're big, but these 2-year-old horses that don't even know what they're doing yet. They just know they have a lot of energy, they're powerful, they're ready to go. So at 4 o'clock in the morning, that is what I am driving to. And then after I'm done with that at 10 o'clock in the morning, usually is when my last horse goes, because you've got to get a clean track. They drag the track. It's a good fresh track for horses that are going fast. So I'm going to 40 miles an hour on the back of a racehorse at 5:30 is my first one that I'm sitting on. And then at 10 o'clock, I'm coming home reviewing my notes for FanDuel or an MMA fight that I've already been looking at that night because I'm a bit of a night owl. And then I'm doing that, or I'm in my homemade studio doing a green screen, or sitting here with wonderful you. So I want people to know that the fighters go through that as well. They're getting up at crazy hours, either going to a full-time job, training 3 times a day with 2 to 3 hour increments. So I just want the fans to know like what these guys are doing. So yeah, when I'm not on CFFC or FanDuel, I'm either in my bed enjoying my children watching a movie, or I'm up at the crack of dawn riding a dragon.
And you got a lot of cute dogs too.
I do. I have the wonderful little Doberman. They're not little, they're Dobermans. So I don't like being home alone. So I just want like everyone to know that like I have security dogs, I have guns. That's like when Chance is gone, I'm like, I married a guy that could kill you with his bare hand. I have dogs that could kill you, and I have guns that can kill you. Like I just, if I'm home alone, just don't even. It would be the wrong house to rob.
How mean are the streets of Kentucky, Geena?
I mean, nowadays I don't know. It's getting a little crazy.
Fair
we
enough.
actually, so Chance, this is a funny story. I'm gonna get in trouble for this one. I had to rebook his plane ticket to Vegas, and he was sleeping, and because the time difference, we're on the same time, we're on different times. So his flight was, I booked the flight. It was for the morning that we had to leave by like 6 a.m. And so my mom had to take the baby, and so our cameras have been going off, and so I was like, well, he's not answering his phone, so I'll just call and do a welfare check with the police. So the police came and knocked on his door because there was some robberies going on. I didn't know this, but he had watched something. A couple had gotten out of jail and were knocking on people's door and stabbing them, kind of in Kentucky, like around our area. So when the police came and knocked on the door to do I just had them check the cameras, and it was, my cameras were going off, but I was like, you know what, I'll just have them. They're always driving around. Someone will just pop over. And so they knocked on the door and woke Chance up. Chance was like thinking it was like this couple that he went to bed with.
It's happening.
And they're going to try and stab him. So he was like, anyways, Chance got woken up. He made it to Vegas, but he also thought that the cops were the couple trying to stab him.
Oh gosh, I don't know. Like, if you ever say it's like,
welcome to the Beck family.
Yeah. If you've ever been like at a counter somewhere, and it's like, because I've had friends tell me this, it's like, oh yeah, the guy they were looking for in the news, he stopped by like the drive-through, and I'm like, are you serious? And it's crazy. Like, yeah, and the police questioned us and everything, and I'm like, I didn't even know what I would do. Crazy. It's like, oh my god, I know, right? Crazy. It's like, would you like to renew your warranty? It's like you sit there almost like crying, like, no, please don't come in. No, but oh my gosh, that's so funny. Geena, I have one question before I leave you. So you've been doing your thing with racing for a good chunk of your life. We've talked before off camera and talked about doing work in entertainment. Obviously now on the microphone, on Fight Pass, and continuing to build in MMA. What is that big? What is that big one for Geena to achieve? Is it in a similar role at the Kentucky Derby one day? Is it, at that UFC pay per view? Is it something else that maybe you don't advertise? What would you say is that one that she's looking for in terms of on the broadcast side?
One thing I love about life is that you can choose the path that you take. There's no limitations. The only one that puts limitations on you is you. And so on the broadcasting side of things, I am so happy at CFFC. I really love it there. I would preferably I would love for that company to grow into a role where I could be a little bit more full time, because as you know, in the broadcasting of MMA, the sport of MMA is new and the broadcasting team is newer. So a spot, and I love freelancing, so it's so hard, Gabriel, because when I get locked into a contract, I almost feel like I'm stuck, right?
You miss out a
Yeah,
few
yeah.
things.
So with MMA, going to the UFC would be, I feel like there would be a spot over there for me one day. With that being said, working with the UFC, getting to work with the highest level of talent in the sport that is my passion project would be 100% ideal for me. But I have found my love for the developmental side. So watching the fighters right before they go. The only problem with that is that they leave you and they go to the other side. So then you're
It's like a teacher saying
for
goodbye to their
sure. So
children every year.
and I'm almost stuck in that realm with the racehorses. I'm stuck with the 2-year olds, and I produce them up until until they take the winter off before they turn 3. So yeah, my ideal spot I would love to have a spot at the UFC and work with the best of the best. That's everybody. I feel like that's everybody's goal. But
Certainly myself
yeah,
included.
absolutely. I mean, that's why we're here and that's why we're doing this. And I love growing in the sport. I love becoming better at things. My husband does a really good job at educating me on stuff that I don't know, because he's like watching from UFC 1 all the way up. That is something that I want to do, and I've started but then get busy. And so just the history, like to get more fonder on the history. But being at the UFC would be a dream job for sure, even though I have a dream job right now with CFFC.
I think that's really awesome. I think that, look, fans who watch you clearly can see that, a very multifaceted broadcaster. What I like most about your story is that you're similar in me to a way that, like, broadcasting wasn't exactly, from the top what you were pursuing. And I think people don't realize it's a very different thing to talk about these things as opposed to, let's say, if you were looking to do acting or looking to do some kind of other performance art, regardless if it's on camera or not, stage or what have you. It's a different set of skills, and you are also someone who did not necessarily go through broadcasting school and this I'll say older, more traditional path of like small market to big market. You've kind of just dived both feet in, and it's grown into something really awesome where fans see you on this big platform. I think it's really cool, and I think it's really awesome that not only have you done the horse racing for so long and you've grown into a role there, but you've actually been able to, from the bottom, and in a way that not a lot of people do, immerse in MMA, find a foothold, and keep growing. Because I think for people who are not as versed in our world, you may not realize that covering the regional scene in anything, and I'm sure racing too, it is one of the least glamorous parts of growing as a broadcaster.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're in a lot of places that do not always prioritize the role that you are there for. There are a lot of shows that have, respectfully lack of a budget to allow you to do the job in the way that it probably should be done. And so, I think that there's this idea that, oh, I'm going to grow a lot of followers and I'm going to step right into a Fight Pass property or some other broadcast property. There is very rarely that kind of thing for a lot of people,
Oof.
especially in the role specifically. You are not there to be a personality. You are not there to be a, for want of a better way to say it, the pretty face doing stuff. You are out there relaying information, relaying stats, broadcasting it. And when I say broadcasting, I mean delivery, and whether it be advertisement, statistics, information. That is a very different thing than just, oh, let me react to what I am seeing. And you've done that and built that in two arenas.
Thank you so much.
I think that is one of the coolest things, really. And I think that people may not realize how hard that is to do as a broadcaster.
I feel like we need a whole story or like a whole sit down of just the stories, because the plethora of things that have happened to me at shows, and I swear if we sat down for like 30 minutes or 40 minutes, because it would be a 40-minute conversation, we always run up to an hour, but yeah. I have had people try to fight me in line to get water. I've had people try to fight me in line to go to the bathroom, even though they see me working on the pay-per-view on the TV. Like, I have had people not pay me. I've had people, I've also have rules now when someone hires me that I very rarely will I take a lift because of just how dangerous it is. I have had some really bad lift rides. I've had some really weird hotel situations where they booked me in a bad hotel, and I'm not a prima donna. I don't ride in the front of the plane. Sometimes I'm like way in the very last row at the bathrooms, and I can't even focus on my work because the motor of the plane. I have done turn and burns where I do a show Friday, I do a show Saturday, I get on a plane, I get home Sunday morning, and then I'm right back at the racetrack for FanDuel. So I'm working triple days. I've had a woman almost want to fight me for my plane seat that I paid extra for. Oh, it's gosh. I don't know why people want to fight me. I'm this 5'1" little girl, and I'm like really nice about things. Like, hi, excuse me, I need to get some water. I'm on the broadcast team, and they're like, craziness.
They feel like you got everything. That's why, nice lady, good looking lady, and just like, you know what? No, I'm suffering. Oh my gosh, the worst is when I don't like you. I think the worst though is when I do a show, and I don't get paid. Like, because they pay you afterwards. Oh, yeah. So okay. So the reason why I don't want to do the regional scene anymore, and that's why I don't, is I used to really love to come and help, which I can do with Chance's regional kickboxing promotion. So I love doing that. But I show up and I didn't get paid, or I have notes. Like, I have written notes out, Gabriel, and the ring announcer doesn't have announcing cards, anything,
and so he takes my notes, my paperwork that I've prepared for the show, and he's taken it. I'm like, where are my notes? And like, oh, so and so took them because he needs them. He'll pass them through the cage. And so now, as a host of the show, I can't do the fighters' walkouts and introduce the fighter properly of where they come from, how much they weighed in yesterday, how much they weighed in before, some little personal tidbits on them, because the announcer who's not prepared, which I could do their job as well, took my notes. I've had announcers where we don't have a producer telling us when to go, and so technically I'm as the one on pay-per-view, I need to cue the announcer for the table to slow down their conversation and stop. I've had announcers, I've just had one announcer bark at me, and I'm very nice. Excuse me, sir. Like, we need to work a little bit of coordination because I'm hosting the table on pay-per-view, and I need to have you, stop so that I can slow the table down. It takes about 10 seconds to wrap up the table, and then you can announce the next fight. And bit my head off. And I was like, ooh, okay. So apparently you don't know how production goes. Because at that time, I'm like 230 shows in. So with that being said, I have a time where I want to do it for the fighters, but there are levels to this game, and I just can't do that level anymore. So CFFC is where I stop
you
it.
you gotta
Fight Pass is where I stop it. I'm
you gotta do what
you know.
you gotta look out for yourself in this business. Absolutely. And I've seen it where we arrive and they almost will sidestep the money question, and they will like, okay, when are you gonna give me the footage? And it's like, when are you gonna send the paycheck? And it's like, it's a very awkward thing, or there's this it's implied that like you are going to do extra as part of your role, and it's like, I am paid for XYZ. Like, for example, the person at the business at the counter is very likely not paid to wash the windows outside. And, that's a whole other guy because you have so many responsibilities over here. And yet they will add it like, well, hey, you are working with our business now. And it's like, excuse me, like, I was told this rate for this role. You want this rate for that role and that one. And you are tacking that one on like it was just like, oh, like, can you do that along the way? And it's like, you mean you want me to add a 5-hour assignment along
Well,
the
you
way?
are so good.
That's a whole other
You are
thing.
so good at what you do because you say I have a bunch of inner facets, but Gabriel, you have a bunch of inner facets. You do the production side, you produce it, you bring all your equipment, you have other companies, you have a plethora of organic followers that are into your sport, and you're also a pretty face and you're really great to get along
Oh,
with.
thank you.
So, with that being said, when you come in and you are able to do A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, a little bit of M&N throw in there too. They're like, oh, well, we just want to pay you for this, but we know you're also, it's easy for you to do this as well. But what the problem that they don't recognize is time is money. So if you want me to do all of every letter in the alphabet, great, I can do that for you. But you are going to have to compensate me because you can either hire me, who is great at what I do, and my preparation time, and I know you prepare for fights. Like when we go on air, I have prepared 8 hours minimum to be on air. And then that fight night is
Right.
all night. And if I'm talking to 10 fighters or 20 fighters, I'm talking to those 20 fighters during weigh-ins. So that's another day added. That time starts when you start accumulating that and putting that into perspective. You're working 30 hours, 40, 50 plus hours on one night so that it can be perfect. And then you don't, just because you prepared for it doesn't mean that when you go on air and those cameras turn on, that you are going to perform it perfectly. So then you have to perfect your craft and you have to be perfect in front of your camera, and you have to land that interview in one take, not two, not three, just because you're a fan of the sport and you like the athletes or you think you're pretty. No, there is hundreds of hours that go into preparing to be perfect in one take. And I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back because at CFFC, I did
Mm-hmm.
these interviews with Jose Perez, who was their former featherweight champion, and Ray Longo. And if you don't know who those are, you can look them up. They're amazing guys. Ray Longo is actually probably one of my top favorite person now. I absolutely adore him. He's amazing.
I love him
I
just on
Ray
TV.
Longo.
Can't get enough
So
of
the
him.
Longo Sarah Jim, but Ray Longo. I got on stage. I had my cameraman. We jumped on there. And you have to keep this within the certain amount of seconds, not minutes, seconds
Yeah.
that the producer wants to put that into the show on that day. So it has to be perfect, precise, informational, and it has to look good. So
And what people don't realize, you have to listen to everything going on
the
as you're
traffic. So you
talking.
have,
So
yeah.
it's not just a nice and quiet, hey, ignore everybody. I'm trying to look you in the eye and be animated and listen and
Yeah.
respond and make this sound good while someone is watching. And the whole time you can hear everyone talking for a broadcast and you have to do all that and yet still also be aware that they may be counting down. You have 9, 8, 7,
While
because
you're
we got to move
talking.
it along.
Yes.
There's another guy about to walk,
Yes.
And it's like, oh, what you do, the amount of people who will be like, well, don't you just show up and ask, so how do you feel about this victory? I I wish that's just how it
I
looks
know.
on
Well, and if
Instagram.
people think that, that means you're doing a great job at your job.
It's true.
That means you're
It's
making it
true
look
because there is,
effortlessly and it's flawless. It's like Laura Sanko has done so much for the sport. Not only is she an
yeah,
athlete, but she's personable. She's beautiful. She works extremely hard. And she's constantly, people don't see her on all the other platforms that she's doing, like the TV shows and
yeah.
I mean, they see it, but they don't know what goes into it, the marketing deals and the advertisement and the brand that people come and film and do things. I mean,
There's so many little things that go into it, and I know you and I both know. We very much are great followers of the Church of Sanko.
oh, the Church of
You and I.
Psycho.
But
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
no, she look. I know she's helped you as she has also helped me, and she would be too humble, but she knows how she's helped myself personally, and her credit is good at the Bank of Gabriel.
Thank
If
you,
you ask
Gabriel.
me, that's how I always describe it. But yeah, you know what? I think the three of us just having a whole metaphor simile off talking about fights, because that's we just like to have fun with that. But no, it's truly when you see a talent like that, John Anik. I mean, I saw this tweet and I agree with it. He's like that McDonald's golden fry. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, it's always the same, and it's at that standard everywhere. Same thing for that man working. Repping him right now. One more
I
sleep.
love that.
By the way, the fans. Okay, I've always said this. Quick side note, because sometimes people like to have fun. Presentation is a part of the job. The fans get to enjoy all the nicest stuff sometimes, and because for those who don't know, we are also paid to look like, hey, look like the professional when you're out here. Don't look like you're just any guy, in the stands with the ticket. They get some of the nicest stuff. And I realized a couple years ago that, like, I don't even get to enjoy all the nicest stuff of my own thing that I love
I
doing.
know.
So I started, now, like, it's funny because I cannot actually wear anything at UFC because I'm always business casual at least. But now, any opportunity I have, I'm like, wait, let's go. So
I'm gonna start
you won't be
lining. I'm
seeing
gonna
me.
start doing like a custom inner lining in my jackets. That's what I want to do.
Yes, like Bruce Buffer
Yeah,
does.
he
Those are
does that.
fun. Yeah.
But I'm looking for, there's a really good tailor, Alexandria. I'll send her to you. But she's out in California. She has those expensive suits. But that's the other thing is that people don't put into perspective the hair, the makeup, the outfits, the shoes. Like I have been doing my own makeup. I've only had it done a couple times for TV, and that's in FanDuel included. So I do my hair and makeup for every single show. I know Laura does hers.
And if the
She's been doing.
and if the gentlemen are a little naive, it costs women's makeup costs a lot of money over time, guys.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Ask
it's a
ask
tax
your
write-off,
girlfriend. She doesn't actually like roll out of bed like that.
right? It's yeah, it's very expensive to be doing what we're doing because you also have to,
Yeah.
you're on television, you have to look flashy, you have to have. I mean, I bargain shop, but that's just a whole other realm of it. But Gabriel, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a
No,
fun
thank
time.
you, Gina, for coming on. It's been a great show. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, UFC 308 this Saturday. Geena Lucille at FanDuel on Instagram and their different channels. At CFFC on UFC Fight Pass on Friday nights. Thank you guys for rejoining the channel. Obviously, you know that we're relaunching it. This is the first preview show of the new iteration, so we're always glad to have it. Gina, thank you for coming on. Best of luck to Chance in his next one. And guys, have a great one.